connection. In some of the exhibitions that we do, the National Gallery, is we tend to try to blur those boundaries. So we have issues of censorship, issues of the right to creative expression. In the process of the installation, surprises took place as to how and why the work of the artist Lwethu Mthethwa, who is currently on trial for brutally killing the woman Nokuphila Khumalo. An image of her is there. For me, as a contemporary artist, it's extremely important to bring the rest of the continent here. Budget is always an issue, and fundraising is always an issue.
Of course, we're here thinking about global futures of museums, so there are things that are obvious that you should experience, such as the South African National Gallery and how this Iziko kind of structure was planned. It's a kind of post-apartheid reconfiguration of museums. I think for me it's really interesting to hear the voices from outside and how they view these institutions.
You dress up like a newspaper and you present yourself like a newspaper, you circulate like a newspaper, but you're not a newspaper, you know. And essentially that was the critique, is that this is a performance. The chronic is an attempt to reconcile inform and format, also, but many other things, the writing, the editorial direction, to reconcile that gap.
That was the experiment. These ideas existing in a language other than the one we speak ourselves.
I am Lionel Davis, born in Cape Town, 1936. I'm 80 years of age. I am also a former Robben Island political prisoner. I was a prisoner there for 7 years. I also started working there when they opened Robben Island as a museum. So I had lots of time association with Robben Island, not as a place of banishment, but as a place of learning, of education, of bringing people together.
Initially decided not to take public funds because we feel that our government are highly challenged in covering basic services. So we tried very hard to work on a more American philanthropic model. We have been criticized because people have made a lot of assumptions about what we're going to be, but we've tried very hard not to make any statements at all about what we will be. We just said that we want to be a representative institution, finished.
So this is a museum that is being built on the failure, on some perceived failure of the National Museum. Why is there not that same will, drive, and money behind the National Museum?
The gallery has a policy of partnering with a museum every single year and contributing to a big exhibition or project that would not ordinarily be seen in the museums in South Africa.
We can find and recognize ourselves in so many places and so many people, despite their nations, despite their ideologies, Sometimes we go to Cuba and we found some artists that are really interested in a very specific point of view, but at the same time they are working together and they are like discussing about so many issues.
In South Africa, we are trying to reclaim space. We are trying to reclaim the urban experience. So these are all moments we need to reclaim it. And I reclaim it through cut.
We spent like 2 years in a project named this Global South or regarding or on this issue of Global South.
Global South does not exist. And for many people it's a shared, let's say, colonial past. That for some other people, it's also a present. And soon it's going to become a present for everybody again. So I think that the way one has to research on this is just keeping it open, like enlightenment, you know.
We are talking about something is not exactly true. We are traveling out countries to discuss something that we don't know exactly what it is and why the museum is so important then.
Because museum is inspiration. It's an agency to make you think. It doesn't necessarily need walls. Yes. I mean, always it needs something because we need to preserve some kind of culture. Maybe we have to find what. But museum is the agency that makes you think. Wanting to keep back something makes you seeing it, no?
Yes, so you could agree that museum is an idea.
Exactly. How nice.
For 6 or 7 years, Blank Projects, that's why it's called Blank Projects, ran as a project space, as a non-profit model. You know, we didn't sell art, we didn't represent artists. We want to be part of a more international conversation. And these days for a gallery, one of the few ways of doing that, especially a young gallery with relatively unknown artists, is by doing art fairs. It's a kind of necessary evil.
I would say the urban politics, or like the way to exist, the politics of existing, living and sharing space on the street is much more intense here in the context, also here in Joburg and in Cape Town and also. So there is a complete different road, a different way of understanding things, which is I think, I wouldn't say the public spaces that we come from are very secure spaces. Of course, there are also different sort of layers in it, but here, of course, there is already the impact of the segregation that is very much buried, almost ingrained. Also, you really realize also on the physicality of the street, and then the relationships between people also on the street.
The reason why this monument was built is to commemorate the people that moved from the Eastern Cape around about the period 1834 to 1838 into the interior of South Africa. We are now in the Hall of Heroes over here. This monument was designed in such a way that on the 16th of December every year, except of course when it's cloudy, you'll find the sun shining through that hole on the cenotaph over here. And it enlightens the words there, "We for you, South Africa." And it's just to symbolize the death of dear old Retief and his 70 compatriots by the hands of Udungani.
But Freedom Park, the national monument, which honors those who have died fighting for freedom. So all of those people who have died fighting for the freedom of South Africa, until today we don't know their whereabouts. So the timeline which shows the history of the country, where we come from and where we are currently.
This is Americana.
Yeah, those are some of the debates which are also happening, because you must remember I was saying with those who died fighting for freedom and humanity.
It really is a question around Marikana. Would Marikana ever make it here?
I'm not sure if you are trying to politicize it.
I
don't want to go there. We're saying
Fair
it's a
enough.
neutral board. It's a neutral body. Verification is neutral, so it's not political.
Investing on freedom is not investing on symbols for freedom. It's more interesting to invest in practices for freedom.
I thought there was a silence in Voortrekker monument with respect to alternative histories.
This is sort of to nod at where acquisitions is going. So it's a contemporary room. So if you can take a look around, it's a bit of a sort of a new age. Some mediums are very new. I mean, here we've got an amazing one by Turaya Magdala. So it's obviously talking about color, and especially in South Africa, it's a big issue. I mean, here we've got sort of there's a work by Blessing Gobeni. It's quite a powerful piece. It's very politically motivated.
You know, we spoke about the lack of money for acquisitions in Cape Town at the National Gallery, and this museum is an anomaly in terms of funding for acquisitions specifically.
I work in the visual arts department. When I first started, it was very hard for me as a black woman, because a lot of them had never had a black woman stand in front of them as a teacher. So, and I also teach. One of my resistances when I joined the school was not to teach curating, because I thought there's no absolute way that I'm going to be that person, and I don't even believe in that. But I do teach from a curatorial framework, so to say. But more interested in having students have curatorial certifications when they think about their projects as well.
It's called the Hector Peterson Monument, and it's named after a single young boy who was the first fatality of the 1976 June 16th massacre.
Is video testimonies of people who were either directly or indirectly involved in the Soweto uprising. And then you also have Antoinette Sithole, who was at the time called Antoinette Peterson, and is the person who is in the Semzima photograph on the side, the lady that's running with her hands in the air. I'm partly responsible for the building, I'm partly responsible for the staff, I'm partly responsible for the programming. If one just focuses on the narrative, then you miss the kind of people who are supposed to be mediating this history, which is the people who are working in this building. Also, the building itself is part of the narrative.
The good thing about this group is like there was no pressure. We could really freely talk, and we could express our very different opinions.
I see this in South Africa, I see this in Peru, and I see this in many places, that commercial circuits are being able to set up infrastructure and establish networks in a very efficient manner. And then you also see non-commercial circuits that are producing critical thought and new possibilities. Chimurenga, for example.
Then two special moments I found, these are new methods I didn't know before, which could perhaps be a way or help a little bit. So the one was the method of Gabi, how she decided to teach, that she has more of these very elementary or philosophical questions, and then she tried to activate her students in the whole act of performing.
What I would call Bolivia the theory peak. Now we into this like declining from the theory into pragmatic of our institutions, and that is the most important thing. If we only discuss, then it was completely wasted time and money. We should have something in the end which changes us and our institutions.